All right, it is Saturday, May 10th, and it is time for I Read the Clermont Sun so you don't have to. And I've gotten pretty familiar with the Sun from doing this for probably now, about 8 weeks, maybe 8, 9 weeks of going through this paper every Saturday morning so you don't have to. And because I've gotten more familiar with it and its complete lack of any news content, generally speaking. I this week actually tried to remember things that are important that have happened in the community that probably should have been in the Sun. And you have to factor in the time shift because the Sun's deadline for this edition, which would be dated, the edition would be dated May 8th. The deadline is May 6th. So that means that you really have to look at the week from the 29th of April through May 6th. So it has to be activities that took place during that time, things that took place during that time. So let's look at the things that I highlighted as being the 5 things that should have been in the Clermont Sun this week. And we'll see. Maybe the editorial staff at the Clermont Sun has determined that these items are not worth coverage. These are not the big news things. They got bigger news things. So let's look. Darian Bullock kidnap sentencing. That took place the preceding Wednesday, and I just happened to stumble into the courtroom where this guy who had been involved in a kidnapping got sentenced, I think, to 10 to 15 years. Okay. So that seemed like a significant event. Okay. The second thing is there was the chamber legislative reception on this past Monday, which is on the 5th before the press deadline. And theoretically, our big time politicos were there. I know Senator Johnson didn't show up. I was barred, so that kind of made it more interesting too. Is they've now it's typical in Clermont County. 2 things typical in Clermont County: you got to pay to see your elected officials, and they bar anybody that would be in any way asking them a question that would be challenging. Third thing was Assistant Prosecutor Zach Zipperer getting an OVI in Kentucky and being suspended by the prosecutor's office on this. The OVI happened April 26th, I think, but the suspension didn't happen until the day after the day that I broke the story of this guy having a crazy OVI in which he not only did he he was twice the legal limit, but he wrecked into a guardrail in northern Kentucky. The fourth thing I had on here is oral arguments in Hicks versus the Clermont GOP. So there's been a big case. I don't think the Clermont Sun has ever had. They don't have any story on any political stuff going on with the GOP. They just ignore this stuff because they're basically owned by the Clermont County government and the GOP. And then I threw in here for my friend Dylan Blevins, Cincy decks and outdoor living ribbon cutting that had all the political bigwigs there. So those were 5 stories that were in the time horizon for this edition of the Clermont Sun. So now let's go to it. Let's go to the Clermont Sun. Here's the Clermont Sun. You got to love a paper that the very first thing in the paper is an ad. So there's an ad for some CD rates. This might be the most relevant news. It might be the most important news item is that you can get 4.15% APR annual percentage per year at Wilmington Savings Bank. That might be the more newsworthy. Now, look at what they had. Now, look at the things that I highlighted. Chamber thing, sentencing of a kidnapper, oral arguments in a lawsuit between me and the Clermont GOP, OVI of a prosecutor. By the way, you notice this paper publishes articles written by the prosecutor's office, but doesn't highlight when the prosecutor's office has somebody get an OVI or wreck into a guardrail at twice legal limit. These are the big news stories. New Richmond to host Appalachian Festival. By the way, submitted by Renaissance New Richmond Incorporated. So again, the paper just puts anything to hell. Everybody should just make up an article and send it in on some bullshit, and if they need it, because it's not really a newspaper. It reprints press releases. Then you've got unofficial Clermont County election results. So for the May, by the way, this is the only article in this whole edition that's attributed to Megan Alley. And by the way, it's kind of irrelevant because by the time you would get this paper, it would be like 3, 4 days after the election. And these are like preliminary results in here. So do they even think through like, hold on a second, by the time we hit the newsstands, the information's going to be wrong. They would be better just having, if it was very clear how something was going to win or lose, just have a chyron on here. Here's the big issues, win, loss, that kind of thing. Okay, just simple. Because putting these statistics is kind of meaningless when you're racing. Their press deadline is Tuesday, the same day as the election. So they, I guess, held the paper for this a little bit to get some results to put in here. But that's the deal. So then we've got everything else, I think, in here up till my man Jake Dowling and his sports stuff. Everything else in here is submitted content. Court Judge Beckman receives Champions Hope Award. Oh, who's submitted by? Clermont County. We publish, this is the paper where the government, it's like a government newsletter. And of course, as you might expect, I doubt that I haven't looked detailed enough of this, but I'll make the prediction that Megan Alley never bothered to ask one damn question to add something of local context or flavor within the article, or something other than what the government wanted printed. And then we got Clermont County Public Health Director retires. So the retirement of a public health director after 30 years was more newsworthy to the Clermont Sun than the sentencing. Let me pop back here. Than the sentencing of somebody for kidnapping. Okay, for 10 to 15 years, I believe, was the sentence before Judge Miles, or an assistant prosecutor getting an OVI in Kentucky and being suspended, or oral arguments in an active lawsuit between the Clermont GOP and me. None of that. That's not the thing we want to cover in the paper. What we're covering in the paper is that the Clermont County Public Health, Water, and Waste Director retires after 30 years. Oh, but by the way, once again, it's submitted content, submitted by Clermont County Public Health. This is not a newspaper. This is owned by the government. It's paid for by payola. It's not literally owned by the government, but it just publishes whatever the government wants. There's never any introspection, never any question. By the way, no more ads on the front page. Let's go to the second page. We've got something that's a submitted content that is about some dinner. Okay, again, this was a higher priority news item than a guy. Let me flip back here again. These are higher priority news items than kidnap sentencing, chamber legislative reception, prosecutor OVI in Kentucky, double the legal limit, oral arguments in my lawsuit against the Clermont GOP at the appellate level, or even Dylan Blevin. Frankly, Dylan Blevin's Cincy Decks and outdoor living ribbon cutting was more important probably than this dinner. Okay. But not that I don't mean to demean the dinner. And I understand when you submit the stuff because they'll print basically anything. And so, anything becomes. Then we've got urgent care launches give back program. So from Sun Sports staff, that probably means Jake. You can't put Jake on too many things, but here's that's something original content, I guess. Some more ads. Now we're up to page 3. Got the community calendar, the Hocus Focus, and the Sudoku and a crossword and a Jungle Gyms ad. So it's very predictable, page 3. And the community calendar is very limited in what it has on it. But here's a good example. This is a perfect example right here. I'm going to zoom in on this one to show how stupid this is. So in the May 8th edition of the Clermont Sun is a community event that's on May 8th. Okay. So nobody would have the paper by then, unless you got the electronic version and you immediately went in there, on the 8th when it becomes published. Oh shit! I just noticed this. Okay, and then look, this like the 9th, something on the 9th. The reality is that people would not, these things would have already happened before you got the paper. If you get the paper in the mail, I don't know how it works now. I used to get the paper in the mail. And I think that, I used to get it. It used to be very random. Sometimes I would get a week reversed because I would get I'd not get one and then they just show up at random times, but never more than a couple of days, 3 days at best after the press date. I would be better off running to the store and buying one if I thought it had relevant news and subscribing for delivery. Because by the time I got it in delivery, it would have been past when I, needed it. Okay, so we're up to page 3. By the way, I also want to highlight that for a while now, this has been down to 12 pages. It used to be 16 pages when I started doing this, but it seems the new normal for the Clermont Sun is only 12 pages of content. Then we got some article about Matt. The whole editorial page is worthless. Okay, worthless. Okay, so not that the topics are worthless, but what does this have to do if you're into the? They just put shit on here that has nothing. This is whatever. Something about Medicare. Written by Danny Tyree, is a lifelong small town Southerner. Okay, so what the hell does this have to do with us? Okay, we've got spring has arrived in Washington, talking about the cherry blossoms and shit. Okay, and then whatever. There's some other junk in there. And then a Cal Thomas article. I guess Megan, if somebody felt we should have a more conservative person have an editorial, but he is a national columnist. And then, even this guy here, let me go back up here. The guy, though, spring has arrived in Washington, is a syndicated column. So there's literally, let's see if there's anything on the next page. I might go back out. We've got this when I kind of skipped this one. Let's go back in here. So you've got when, oh, that's the Cal one. So I talked about Cal, the Cal Thomas article. Let's go to the next page. And that's it. So that's the editorial page. And absolutely nothing of local flavor, nothing of local interest. And when is the last time the Sun, do they even have an editorial staff where they wrote an editorial on something? They don't. I mean, it's kind of a just complete joke. If you remember leading up to the West Clermont levy that got destroyed like 83 to 17%, there was like an article every week by somebody from West Clermont that was like a feel good type thing. Not bad stuff, just it was clearly managed for the levy. Notice that when the levy's over, there's no more, and they lost, there's no more weekly article from somebody from West Clermont. So now we're up to, what is this, page 5 out of 12. We've got new Clermont County shelter administrator. This is going to end up being a disaster. Because the issues at the shelter are not fixable by hiring a person. They are because of an insular set of commissioners that basically hate animals, as far as I could tell, and certainly hate citizens. So people that kicked Cincinnati Cares out and then ended up spending at least 2.5 times more taxpayer money on the shelter and dramatically reduced the hours and got rid of cats. And that's the new normal. Just shitty. And I keep pointing out, this is, which you don't realize, happens all the time in Clermont County government. Just the shelter has put more focus on it. And I'm going to try to get the people that are in the shelter to get reinvigorated. Some of them got demoralized by Diamond Dave Painter, who is a complete ass to them, mansplaining to women. Just a bad person on this stuff. Disingenuous, phony. But anyway, that's funny. This whole article never mentions any issues going at the shelter. And the new person, this Karen Schwartz, God love her, it has quotes from her and stuff. But, what would you ask her if you were doing a real journalistic interview? You'd ask her questions like, what do you think needs to be reformed? There's been like probably a dozen probably 2 dozen press stories in Cincinnati media about how effed up the Clermont County shelter is, except for Chelsea Sick from Local 12, which seems she'll do anything to get time with David Painter, including throw the animals and the citizens of Clermont County under the bus. But look at the article submitted by Clermont County. I mean, this is a newspaper. The articles are all written by the government. Now we got Council on Aging, submitted by Council on Aging. Okay, the government payola newspaper. Some more ads. Now we've got the good part of the paper. Jake Dowling and the Sports Boys. The other guy, I can't remember his name, but they always have pages of original content with pictures where obviously Jake's going to these events. Look at these action pictures from Jake Dowling. Where the hell is Megan Alley doing any news stuff? The sports guy kicks ass, does a shitload of articles, and gets action photos. So he's clearly going there. So even look at, he's got up here. I'm going to scroll back up. You got Jake having these volleyball pictures live, and then he's got softball pictures. So he's out there. He's out there, and updates. That would involve real work. And let's compare. I'm on page 7. I'll go back to page 1. Just look at what he's got on scores. What's coming up compared to Megan Alley. This is her entire content. Her entire content is a flash article that's irrelevant by the time you read it on election results. It's a complete joke. Where is the news content of this paper? But hats off again to Jake Dowling. Jake Dowling, tennis, some more ads. Now we're getting close to the payola. Here's the payola. So the payola is that the government publishes all of its legal notices in this paper. The paper cannot survive without these. The paper's marginal. These legal notices that nobody really looks at. See, look at this. Look at 3. Let's count this. 1, 2, 3 pages of legal notice stuff, and take it out. Say it's 2.5, 2.25 page when I take out the other stuff that's been on these pages. This is what keeps this paper afloat, is these payola government ads. And they're never going to go against the government, because if the government got hacked at them, they could go move the advertising to the Enquirer, let's say, for a couple of months. Sun goes out of business, and then it is what it is. Or Sun acquiesces before. That's probably more realistic. If the government threatened the Sun with, we're going to move all of our legal advertising over to the Enquirer for a while because we're pissed that you wrote an article that said Dave Painter wasn't Jesus Christ. The paper would be probably. They already show they have no journalistic integrity, because everything's like a provided article mostly, and they don't even ask questions to refine the provided article. Like, go ask Judge Beckman a question or two. It's not that freaking hard. I think I do more content now in a day than Megan Alley does in a whole week for the Sun. In a day, literally. I got 2 things I'm sitting on to get out. I just got out my interview with the Rooster. I'm not always going to be at that pace, but what does Megan Alley do all day? Okay. Now we've got Mental Health Awareness Month, again, submitted by the Department of Mental Health. We're on page 11. And then Matt's take. Matt is always doing his another Sun contributor, usually about the Reds and stuff like that. And then we've got, Revolutionary War Patriot grave marking. So just as an aside, let's remember, I'm going to flip back here for a second, that the number one, this article on Revolutionary War Patriot grave marking is more important at the Sun than Derek Bullock, kidnapping sentencing, chamber legislative reception, all of these assistant prosecutor, OVI in Kentucky, oral arguments in Hicks v. Clermont, and Cincy Dex ribbon cutting. So, pop over here, Revolutionary War Patriot grave marking is submitted content is more important than any of that stuff. It's just a joke. It is just a joke. Now, again, nothing against Revolutionary War Patriot grave marking. It's just this is, it's just an exemplary of how terrible this newspaper is. They could have how about having a real news? How about having, 3 pages of real news, 3-4 pages of real news, 1-2 pages of real editorial, 3-4 pages of sports content. You already got the 3-4 pages of sports content, so you're up to what, 7 to 10 pages just in what I described. 7 to 10 pages in what I described. That would make so much better of a paper. We've got some more Jake Dowling stuff, here. And then if you want to have, that would get you up to 10, 12, maybe have a couple pages of submitted content. Every week have a section that's specifically, here's the submitted content for the week, versus that becomes the core of the paper. Okay. So I am on page 12 right now. This is the last page of the paper. And I have just read the Clermont Sun, so you don't have to. There's really nothing in it. And then you can follow my page to learn more stuff about things like the Chamber Legislative Reception, Assistant Prosecutor Zach Zipper, OVI, oral arguments in Hicks v. Clermont, and the Cincy Deck and Outdoor Living. I have better and more news on my Facebook page than the newspaper for our county offers up in a weekly edition. Now, we are at the beautiful time, the time we all live, um, to talk about the Dunkin' Doing the Irish Thunder. I'll pop this back up here. I'd be pissed that they don't include my ad in the digital editions because I'm using the digital edition here. So the Jungle Gyms ad is at the newsstand edition. I assume it's in the home delivery edition, but it's not in the when you look at the PDF of the digital edition, it's not there. And I'd be jungle like bullshit putting my thing there too. I bet you more people do digital than do mailbox delivery. Remember last time I tried to do advertising, it was that the mailbox delivery was only 1,133 people or something like that. So let's look at what Jungle Gym's got to offer. I already noticed. I look at this again. I say every week, I'm not a big, I'm not a fancy meats guy, but obviously Jungle is the place to go for your fancy meat needs, and they always have the front page have a lot of that stuff on there. They have some good deals on pop, every now and then, and it's called pop. We live in Ohio. It's pop. It's not soda. I caught myself saying soda. I had to correct myself to say we call it pop. I'm proud to call it pop. So the pop, what's this? 24 pack, $10.99. I think that's a pretty good deal. And I don't drink much pop, but I every now and then I like to have a Mountain Dew, and I got some Mountain Dew on sale there last week while I was picking up some beer because they have a great selection of beer. I don't drink fancy beer, but I drink Miller 64, and you can't get it at most places. But Jungle has a great selection. And then look at that tenderloin. It's pretty good deal too. The Mother's Day tenderloin there. Breakfast stuff. Don't forget about the Jungle Gyms podcast. Wouldn't it be wild if the Clermont Sun had a podcast? That would actually involve him to do some work though. So the grocery store probably has better news in its podcast than the Clermont Sun does. Got potatoes, variety of things. They got the Jungle Gyms products themselves. When you see that JJ logo, like on that cucumber salad, that's a Jungle Gyms product, and I'm sure those are high quality. I've not actually bought a lot of them. To be honest, we get our groceries at Walmart, and then we go to Jungles for, specialty items and so forth. And I think a lot of people do that. I should one time. It would be interesting to do I think it'd be a cool thing to do is to do a shop off where I get to pick a cart of things and then go to Jungle, Walmart, Kroger, Meijer, and come up with a price. That's the kind of thing a newspaper would do, right? Who has the best prices on a standard basket of things? Maybe I need to consult with some people. So it's not just crap I would get like, Cheez-Its and shit, but also maybe like, some meats and stuff like that where it might differentiate the prices versus just the run-of-the-mill stuff. Twinkies. Everybody loves Twinkies. I haven't had a Twinkie forever. I think if you eat Twinkies, you live forever because all the preservatives and so forth. Graters, pints of ice cream. Graters, man, that is good ice cream. Red Baron pizzas, $4.99. That's our oven pizza of choice at home. Milk, that's a good deal on milk. Okay, and then cupcakes and stuff. Look at how nice those look. I mean, with the butterflies and everything. I'm betting. I really need to shop more at Jungles for this stuff. I'll buy cupcakes at Walmart and stuff like that. I bet you the presentation, the quality is better at Jungle. And what I've learned from doing this ad, that a lot of times the prices are as good or better than on some of these things. I do think like a Walmart's cheaper when you're buying just stuff like I would buy, Cheez-It crackers, and I keep the potato chips and stuff like that. But Senior Day on Wednesday, 5%. Don't forget Senior Day. On their website, it says you need a Golden Buckeye card, so make sure to have your Golden Buckeye card. And then usually they got some good drink stuff at the end. I like to see the drink stuff. I need to put some Everclear on sale because in the neighborhood we use that for things that we make called throat punch. We love Everclear. So you've got pop here, some more pop stuff. A lot of specialty pops. When I was there getting Mountain Dew, I noticed all the specialty pops and varieties of things. A lot of interesting stuff. It's just very interesting. By the way, there's a whole area of hot sauces, like on that hot, what's it called? That YouTube channel that does nothing but, I think it's called Hot Ones, where celebrities eat hot wings. Jungle Gyms has an amazing section of hot wing sauce. I was a little stunned by how expensive some of it is, but if you want to do a hot ones at your house, stop by Jungle Gyms. They even have Hot Ones gift packs there. I'll look for those to be on sale and run to get those. And then you got some beer and wine stuff to wrap up the ad. So that is it. That's I read the Clermont Sun so you don't have to. The two things that I really want everybody to keep in mind is, I guess there's three things I'll leave you with in the last couple minutes here. One is that not one of the stories that I highlighted on my Facebook page before their press deadline as being relevant things, not one of them is in the Clermont Sun. That's one thing. Second thing is the headline story is you can get 4.15 annual percentage rate per year on a CD at Wilmington Savings Bank. So that's important to know. That's the number one news story in Clermont County this week, is that Wilmington Savings Bank has a 4.15 APR or APY. That Jungle Gyms, be sure to go to Jungle Gyms. That's the third thing, is that because Jungle Gyms is the most valuable part of the paper, I think, and I encourage people to go there. You can buy the Clermont Sun to get the Jungle Gyms ad, or you can go to Jungle Gyms and just get it for free. Or you can go to their website and they have it both. I think they have it I know they have it in PDF version, but they also have it in web version. So thank you for tuning into I Read the Clermont Sun so you don't have to. Have a wonderful Saturday and have a wonderful Mother's Day.